Most women believe attraction is built slowly through looks, chemistry, or conversation. But psychology shows something far more uncomfortable and far more empowering. Attraction can shift instantly. In the first moments of interaction, the brain is not evaluating beauty, it's evaluating emotional impact. And when one specific internal state is present, perception changes immediately. Men don't analyze it, they feel it, and once they do, everything about how they see you recalibrates. And the reason why everything about how they see you recalibrates is because his nervous system is conducting a subconscious threat assessment that happens faster than conscious thought, scanning for emotional stability versus emotional volatility. And when you demonstrate genuine self-regulation, when your emotional state remains steady regardless of external circumstances, when you don't react from anxiety or need approval to feel okay, when you can be present without requiring him to manage your emotions, his brain registers you as fundamentally different from most people he encounters. This internal shift happens instantly, often before he can articulate why you feel different, and it fundamentally changes the dynamic from you pursuing his validation to him pursuing access to your rare combination of warmth and emotional independence. Hi, I'm Gabriel Hart from My Daily Love, and in this video we'll talk about the specific quality that psychologists agree makes women instantly more attractive, and exactly how emotional self-regulation creates magnetic attraction that most women completely overlook. Number 1. Emotional self-regulation, the quality that changes everything. The most powerful shift you can make in your attractiveness isn't physical, it's psychological. Emotional self-regulation is the ability to remain calm, grounded, and emotionally steady, especially under pressure. This isn't being cold, distant, or playing hard to get. It's being genuinely centered within yourself, regardless of external circumstances. And when a man encounters this quality in a woman, his entire perception of her shifts instantly. What's actually happening in his mind is an unconscious evaluation of emotional maturity and stability. From a psychological perspective, emotional self-regulation signals extraordinarily high mate value because it communicates multiple desirable qualities simultaneously. Confidence that doesn't require external validation, security in yourself that isn't dependent on his behavior, maturity that can handle difficulty without falling apart, self-respect that maintains boundaries, safety that his nervous system craves, and emotional intelligence that can navigate complexity. Most people he encounters are emotionally reactive. Their mood shifts based on what he does, they need reassurance constantly, they panic when things feel uncertain, they chase when they're anxious. But when you remain genuinely calm and grounded, you're demonstrating a level of internal stability that's rare and therefore extremely attractive. So the next time you feel triggered, when he doesn't text back quickly, when he seems distant, when you feel uncertain about where things are going, your ability to remain emotionally steady instead of reacting from anxiety makes you instantly more attractive than any physical change ever could. You're not suppressing emotions, you're processing them internally and responding from a grounded place rather than reacting from panic. That self-possession is magnetic because it signals to his nervous system that you're safe, stable, and high value. From what I've seen, the women who master emotional self-regulation report a complete shift in how men pursue them. They stop chasing and start being chased because their energy fundamentally changes from needy to complete. Number 2. His nervous system experiences relief around you. Here's what most women don't realize about attraction and nervous system biology. When a woman is emotionally regulated, a man's entire nervous system relaxes in her presence. Calm equals attraction at a biological level. This isn't conscious. He's not thinking, she's emotionally regulated, therefore I'm attracted. His body is registering safety and responding with desire before his mind understands why. The reason this works so well is because most interactions with people require emotional labor and vigilance. When someone is emotionally reactive, you're unconsciously monitoring their state and adjusting your behavior to manage their emotions. This creates low-grade stress and tension. But when you're with someone who's genuinely emotionally regulated, someone whose mood is stable, who doesn't require you to walk on eggshells, who can handle disappointment without collapsing, the nervous system exhales. There's no threat to manage, no emotional volatility to navigate, no fear of triggering an overreaction. This biological relief registers as attraction because humans are drawn to what soothes their nervous system, not what activates their stress response. In practice, this means that when you remain calm during moments that would make most women anxious or reactive, when plans change, when he needs space, when uncertainty arises, His nervous system registers your emotional stability as profoundly attractive. You're not creating stress, you're creating peace. And peace is magnetic, especially to men who've experienced relationships where they felt responsible for managing someone else's emotional state. With you, they can finally relax. What most women don't realize is that men pursue women who feel like relief, not women who feel like work. Your emotional regulation makes you the former instead of the latter. Number 3. You command respect through self-possession. What if the fastest way to earn a man's respect isn't through accomplishments or achievements, but through how you handle yourself emotionally? When you don't overreact, beg, chase, or collapse emotionally when things get difficult, men read that as strength. Not masculine strength, feminine strength. The kind of internal fortitude that says, I can handle myself regardless of external circumstances. Think about it this way. Respect isn't given to people who fall apart under pressure. It's given to people who maintain their composure, who handle difficulty with grace, who don't lose themselves when things get challenging. When you can receive disappointing news without having a meltdown, when you can be told no without chasing or pleading, when you can experience distance without panicking, you're demonstrating a level of emotional maturity that commands respect. He sees a woman who doesn't need him to regulate her emotions, who can process her feelings independently, who maintains her dignity even when she's hurt. That strength is attractive because it signals you're a partner, not a project. This looks like maintaining your calm when he cancels plans. No problem, I'll make other arrangements. It looks like handling distance without desperate texts, giving him space without making it a punishment. It looks like expressing hurt without emotional manipulation. That bothered me, stated clearly without hysterics. Every time you demonstrate that you can handle difficult emotions without falling apart or making him responsible for fixing them, you earn deeper respect and therefore deeper attraction. Over the years, I've noticed that men consistently describe being most attracted to women who have their shit together emotionally. That's code for emotional self-regulation, and it's the foundation of respect in any relationship. Number 4, your emotional independence creates genuine curiosity. While most women try to create interest through pursuit or availability, emotionally regulated women create something more powerful, curiosity. Men lean in when they can't control your emotional state. When your happiness, your calm, your sense of self aren't dependent on his behavior, he becomes genuinely curious about what does move you, what does matter to you, what you're actually investing your emotional energy in if it's not obsessively focused on him. Here's what's going on beneath the surface. Humans are fascinated by what they can't easily influence or control. When your emotional state fluctuates based on his behavior, when he can make you happy by paying attention or upset by pulling back, he quickly learns he has emotional control over you. And once someone knows they can control you, curiosity dies. But when you remain emotionally steady regardless of what he does, when you're genuinely okay whether he's close or distant, when your sense of well-being comes from internal sources rather than his validation, suddenly you become interesting. Who is this woman who doesn't need my approval to feel good? What creates joy for her if it's not my attention? Why doesn't she chase like everyone else? The way you do this is by genuinely building a life and emotional world that doesn't revolve around him. When he pulls back and you remain genuinely engaged with your own life instead of spiraling, he feels that difference. When he comes back and you're warm but not desperately grateful, he notices. When your emotional state is stable and self-generated rather than reactive to his behavior, you become the rare woman who's complete without him. And that completeness is intensely curious to men used to being someone's emotional center. When I talk to men about women who fascinated them, they consistently describe women who seem genuinely content with or without them. That emotional independence created a curiosity that pursuit-based strategies never could. Number 5. You create deep, grounded desire instead of chaotic intensity. Avoidants are attracted to emotional regulation because it creates a completely different type of desire. Not chaotic, anxiety-driven intensity that burns out quickly. Deep, grounded desire that lasts. When a woman is emotionally regulated, attraction builds on a foundation of safety and respect rather than drama and uncertainty, which creates sustainable desire instead of temporary infatuation. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Chaotic relationships create adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormones that feel intense but aren't sustainable. The highs are high, but the lows are devastating, and over time, the nervous system exhausts. But relationships with emotionally regulated women create oxytocin and dopamine, bonding and pleasure chemicals that build stable, long-term attraction. There's no roller coaster of emotions, no constant drama to create artificial intensity. Instead, there's steady warmth, genuine connection, and the profound relief of being with someone who doesn't create chaos. This type of desire deepens over time, instead of fading, because it's built on nervous system compatibility, not emergency response. Here's how you apply this in real life. Stop creating drama or intensity thinking it will keep him interested. Emotional volatility might create temporary excitement, but it destroys long-term desire because his nervous system associates you with stress. Instead, be the woman whose presence is consistently calming and positive. Be genuinely happy without needing him to create that happiness. Be emotionally stable so he can relax instead of brace for impact. The desire this creates is quieter than drama-based intensity, but it's infinitely more sustainable, and it's what actually leads to lasting commitment. This translates to understanding that quality men don't want relationships that feel like emergency situations. They want partners who feel like home, and emotional regulation is what creates that sense of home. Number 6. You provide the safety that creates attachment. The most underrated aspect of emotional regulation is how it creates safety, which is the foundation of genuine attachment. This is huge, especially for avoidant or guarded men who've spent their lives defending against emotional unpredictability. When you're emotionally regulated, you become the rare woman whose presence feels genuinely safe instead of threatening, and safety creates the kind of deep attachment that pursuit or intensity never could. What's really happening is that avoidant men learned early that other people's emotions are dangerous and burdensome. Maybe they had an emotionally volatile parent. Maybe past relationships felt suffocating because the woman's emotional state was always his responsibility. Whatever the origin, they developed a deep wariness of emotional unpredictability. So when they meet a woman who's genuinely emotionally regulated, who doesn't have meltdowns, who doesn't punish with emotional volatility, who can handle her feelings independently, their entire defensive system relaxes. For the first time, they're with someone whose emotions don't feel like a threat they need to manage. Next time you find yourself wanting to have an emotional reaction, remember that your ability to remain calm and process independently is creating safety that his nervous system desperately needs. When you can be disappointed without collapsing, hurt without retaliating, anxious without making it his problem, you're showing him that your emotions are yours to manage, not his to fix. This safety is what allows avoidant men to actually attach instead of perpetually pulling away. As a man, I can tell you that the women I felt safest with were the ones whose emotional state was stable and self-managed. With them, I could finally stop defending and start connecting. That safety created attachment nothing else could. Number 7. You don't chase when anxious. Here's the thing. Emotional regulation is most visible and most attractive in the moments that typically trigger anxiety. When you don't chase when anxious, when he's distant or you haven't heard from him, and you resist every urge to reach out desperately, you're demonstrating the exact quality that makes you irresistible. Most women fail this test instantly, which is why the ones who pass it stand out so dramatically. What makes this so effective is that anxiety triggers pursuit in most people. When they feel uncertain about connection, they chase to resolve the uncertainty. But this chasing communicates insecurity and neediness, which decreases attraction. Emotionally regulated women experience the same anxiety. They're human, but they process it differently. They feel the uncertainty, acknowledge the anxiety, and choose not to act from that place. They don't send multiple texts trying to reconnect. They don't manufacture reasons to reach out. They sit with the discomfort of not knowing and trust that if he wants to connect, he will. Put simply, the next time you feel anxious because you haven't heard from him, your ability to not chase is a demonstration of emotional regulation that instantly increases your attractiveness. You're showing him that you can tolerate uncertainty without falling apart, that your sense of security isn't dependent on constant contact, and that you trust yourself enough to let the distance be what it is. Men notice this. They notice the woman who doesn't panic, who doesn't need constant reassurance, who can be genuinely okay with space. And that noticing translates directly into increased attraction. What this means for you is that your hardest moments, the moments where you want to chase most, are actually your biggest opportunities to demonstrate the emotional regulation that makes you magnetic. Number 8, you don't explode when triggered. While most people react emotionally when triggered, emotionally regulated women respond intentionally. You don't explode when triggered. When something hurts or frustrates you, when he does something disappointing, when you feel disrespected, instead of immediately reacting with anger, accusations, or emotional volatility, you pause, you process, you respond from a grounded place rather than reacting from emotional hijacking, and this self-control is incredibly attractive. His brain is actually doing something very specific when you don't explode. It's registering that you're safe and mature. Emotional explosions create fear and defensiveness in relationships. When someone blows up over small things, when their reaction is disproportionate to the trigger, when emotions are unpredictable and volatile, the other person starts walking on eggshells, bracing for the next explosion. But when you can receive triggering information and respond calmly, when you can say, "That hurt me and I need some time to process it," instead of screaming, you're demonstrating emotional maturity that makes him feel safe instead of defensive. So when this happens, when he does something that bothers you and you feel the urge to explode, practice the pause. Take a breath. Process the emotion internally before you respond externally. When you do speak, address the issue from a calm place. When you did X, I felt Y. I need Z going forward. No yelling, no accusations, no emotional manipulation, just clear, calm communication from a regulated emotional state. This is infinitely more attractive than volcanic emotional reactions. This happens more than most women realize. Men are deeply attracted to women who can handle conflict without creating drama, who can express hurt without attacking, who can set boundaries without punishment. That's emotional regulation in action. Number 9, you don't over-explain yourself. What if one of the clearest signs of emotional regulation is knowing when to stop talking? When you don't over-explain yourself, when you can state something once clearly and then stop instead of anxiously justifying and re-explaining and defending, you're demonstrating confidence and emotional security that's rare and attractive. Over-explaining comes from anxiety about being understood or accepted. Clarity comes from knowing your position is valid regardless of whether he agrees. The secret is that over-explaining actually decreases your attractiveness because it signals insecurity. When you feel the need to justify a simple boundary or defend a reasonable expectation with paragraphs of explanation, you're unconsciously communicating that you doubt your right to have needs. But when you can state something once, "I need daytime communication, not just late-night texts," and then stop talking, you're demonstrating that you believe you deserve what you're asking for. That confidence is magnetic. Instead of anxiously explaining why you deserve basic respect, practice saying things once and letting them land. If he genuinely cares, he'll hear you the first time. If he argues or makes you feel like you need to defend normal needs, that's information about his character, not about whether you explained well enough. Emotionally regulated women know their worth doesn't require justification. They state needs clearly and let men decide whether they're capable of meeting them. Remember this. The woman who can communicate clearly without anxious over-explanation is demonstrating the kind of emotional security that makes men take her seriously and want to meet her standards. Number 10. You don't panic during distance. The most powerful demonstration of emotional regulation is how you handle distance. When you don't panic during distance, when he pulls back or needs space, and you remain genuinely calm instead of spiraling into anxiety or pursuing desperately, you're showing him something most women can't, that you're emotionally complete whether he's close or far, and that completeness is devastatingly attractive. There's a deeper reason why this works. Panic during distance communicates that your emotional stability is dependent on proximity to him. When you fall apart every time he needs space, when you interpret distance as rejection, when you can't function normally when he's not constantly present, you're unconsciously positioning him as the regulator of your emotional state. This creates pressure and eventual resentment. But when distance doesn't destabilize you, when you can genuinely continue living your life fully when he pulls back, when your emotional state remains steady regardless of his proximity, you're demonstrating that you're with him by choice, not need. This works because men can feel the difference between a woman who needs them to feel okay and a woman who chooses them from a place of already being okay. The former feels like responsibility and burden. The latter feels like partnership and attraction. When he creates distance and you respond with genuine calm, "Okay, let me know when you're ready to connect." Instead of anxiety and pursuit, you're passing a test most women fail. You're showing him you can give him space without punishment, without falling apart, without making his need for autonomy a crisis. In my experience, the women who can remain genuinely calm during a man's withdrawal are the ones he comes back to with renewed investment. The distance revealed you don't need him to be whole, and that revelation makes him want to stay. Number 11, you respond instead of react. What most women don't realize about emotional regulation is that it's not about suppressing emotions. It's about choosing your response instead of being controlled by your reaction. You respond instead of react. When something triggers you emotionally, you feel the feeling fully. You process it internally, and then you choose how to respond from a grounded place rather than letting the emotional reaction control your behavior. The truth is that reactions are immediate, unconscious, and often disproportionate. When you react, you're being controlled by emotion rather than choosing your behavior intentionally. But when you respond, you've created space between the trigger and your behavior. You've felt the emotion, acknowledged it, and decided how you want to address it maturely. This conscious choosing is what emotional regulation actually looks like, and it's incredibly attractive because it demonstrates self-control and intentionality. This looks like feeling hurt when he cancels plans, acknowledging the disappointment internally, and then responding calmly, "That's disappointing. Let's reschedule when you have more clarity on your schedule." You didn't suppress the hurt. You felt it, but you didn't let the hurt control your behavior into an emotional outburst or passive-aggressive response. You chose a mature response that addressed the issue without creating drama. That self-control is magnetic. The key is to practice creating space between trigger and response. When something bothers you, pause, breathe, feel the emotion, process what you actually need, then respond from that grounded place. The more you can do this, the more attractive you become because you're demonstrating mastery over your emotional state.